D4vd's life seemed perfect, but behind the luxury of his Tesla, a deadly secret was unfolding. When his body was found, loved ones were left in shock, and a trail of betrayal and deception began to unravel. The quiet streets of Crestwood had always carried an air of calm, where neighbors knew each other by name and evening walks were routine. But on that rainy night, everything changed. D4vd, a 25-year-old tech entrepreneur, was found dead inside his sleek black Tesla, parked perfectly in his driveway. The rain had left streaks across the windshield, glinting under the dim streetlights, masking the grim scene within. At first glance, it could have been dismissed as an accident, a tragic mishap in the comfort of his own home, but something about the scene made investigators pause. The car's advanced security system showed no signs of forced entry, and yet, the vehicle had been tampered with in ways that weren't immediately visible. Neighbors reported nothing unusual, though subtle observations hinted otherwise. One passerby recalled seeing a figure loitering near D4vd's driveway earlier that week, but the memory seemed insignificant until investigators began connecting dots. Inside the house, everything appeared normal, doors locked, windows intact, and no signs of a struggle. Yet the DNA found on the steering wheel told a different story. It was foreign, unfamiliar, a silent witness to a crime that had unfolded behind closed doors. Detectives began to question whether D4vd had known the person who had killed him or if he had been targeted randomly, an innocent victim caught in a dark plan. D4vd's life had seemed perfect to outsiders. His career in tech was thriving, social media followers admired his lifestyle, and his friends often described him as intelligent and driven. Yet beneath the surface, there were tensions. Business disputes, unpaid loans, and growing financial pressure created friction he kept private. The combination of wealth and ambition had drawn both admiration and envy, and it was clear to the investigators that someone might have seen opportunity in his vulnerabilities. As the night stretched into the early hours, police combed the scene for clues, photographing every corner and analyzing every detail. Surveillance cameras from nearby homes offered little help. They caught no one entering or leaving during the critical hours. It was as if the killer had appeared out of thin air, executed the act, and vanished without a trace. The lack of obvious evidence made the case all the more chilling, leaving detectives and loved ones grappling with a reality that was almost impossible to comprehend. D4vd's death was not just sudden, it was carefully orchestrated, and the first hints of a sinister plan were beginning to surface, setting the stage for an investigation that would unravel shocking secrets and hidden betrayals. As the investigation into D4vd's death progressed, layers of his life that had remained hidden began to surface. Detectives sifted through financial records, emails, and phone messages, uncovering disputes and tensions that painted a picture far different from the one friends and neighbors had known. Business partnerships that had seemed solid were riddled with disagreements over money, ownership, and intellectual property. Unpaid loans and late payments hinted at pressure that may have driven others to desperate measures. One name kept appearing in text messages and call logs, someone who had once been considered a close confidant. This revelation shook the investigators, suggesting that betrayal might have played a central role in the murder. Meanwhile, digital evidence began to reveal troubling patterns. Surveillance footage from nearby stores showed a shadowy figure lingering near D4vd's home in the days leading up to his death. The figure moved carefully, almost as if studying routines, entrances, and exits. Analysts also discovered that the Tesla's autopilot system had been tampered with, pointing to deliberate interference rather than a simple accident. The idea that someone had manipulated a high-tech vehicle to commit murder sent shockwaves through the investigative team. It was a chilling reminder that technology, meant to provide safety and convenience, could be weaponized by someone with knowledge and intent. Friends and family, struggling with grief, began piecing together their own understanding of what might have happened. They recalled unusual interactions, secretive meetings, and sudden disagreements that now seemed like warning signs. Each discovery added complexity to the case, forcing detectives to navigate a tangled web of motives, grudges, and financial entanglements. Every lead raised new questions: who had access to the Tesla, who had a motive to harm D4vd, and how had the perpetrator avoided leaving traces? The investigation took on a tense, almost frantic pace as law enforcement worked to connect digital footprints to real-world movements. Every phone record, transaction, and security camera feed became a potential clue, yet the killer's identity remained elusive. It became increasingly clear that the crime had been meticulously planned, and that D4vd's death was the result of careful orchestration rather than random chance. Loved ones, desperate for answers, watched as detectives slowly unraveled the story, realizing that someone who had seemed trustworthy might have been hiding dangerous intentions all along. The case, once seen as a tragic accident, was now revealing its darker truth, and the twists were only beginning. Months into the investigation, a breakthrough finally emerged, bringing the case into sharper focus. A private investigator, hired by D4vd's family, noticed a pattern linking his death to a series of seemingly innocuous online messages he had received in the weeks before his murder. Initially dismissed as harmless spam or minor threats, these messages now took on a chilling significance. They revealed a calculated effort to intimidate and unsettle him, suggesting that someone had been watching his every move. Digital evidence indicated multiple attempts to hack into D4vd's Tesla remotely, confirming suspicions that the vehicle had been intentionally manipulated to cause harm. As investigators dug deeper, the circle of potential suspects narrowed. It became clear that the killer must have been someone with intimate knowledge of D4vd's habits, his schedule, and the layout of his home. Friends, business associates, and acquaintances from social media were scrutinized with new intensity. Even minor inconsistencies in their statements were now examined as potential clues. The realization that the perpetrator could be someone who had appeared trustworthy added a layer of tension and unease, not only for the investigators but also for D4vd's family and closest friends. Every piece of evidence pulled the investigation in unexpected directions. Phone records revealed late-night communications that had gone unnoticed, financial transactions hinted at hidden motives, and security footage captured fleeting movements of unfamiliar individuals near D4vd's property. It became evident that the crime was not impulsive but carefully planned, with each step designed to avoid detection. The level of sophistication suggested that the murderer had anticipated how investigators might respond, turning the case into a complex puzzle that demanded both patience and intuition. The pressure intensified as detectives realized that uncovering the truth required not only forensic analysis but also understanding the psychology of someone who could orchestrate such a crime. Patterns of surveillance, digital intrusion, and social observation indicated that the killer had been methodical, calculating, and patient. Loved ones grew increasingly desperate for answers, haunted by the possibility that betrayal had come from within. D4vd's circle. The investigation had evolved into a tense race against time, each new lead revealing deeper layers of deceit, manipulation, and hidden danger. With every discovery, the story of D4vd's death became more intricate, the threads of motive and opportunity intertwining in ways no one had anticipated. The case, already gripping, now teetered on the edge of revelation, promising twists that would shock those closest to the victim and challenge every assumption investigators had made so far. The investigation took a shocking turn when evidence pointed toward an unexpected direction. A neighbor previously overlooked came forward with a revelation that had been buried beneath months of routine observations. They recalled seeing unusual activity near D4vd's home during the nights before his death, shadows moving in the driveway, faint lights flickering in windows where no one should have been. Initially dismissed as coincidence, these details now forced detectives to reevaluate the case entirely. The possibility of a second suspect emerged, someone who appeared to have no direct connection to D4vd, yet had been quietly observing and studying him. Forensic experts began combing the Tesla's cabin for additional clues. Subtle fingerprints and traces of foreign material hinted at careful planning, suggesting that the killer had avoided leaving obvious evidence for months. Each discovery pointed to precision rather than carelessness, reinforcing the idea that this was not a crime of opportunity but a meticulously executed plan. Investigators realized that the murder may have involved multiple individuals working together, coordinating their actions to make the death appear accidental while concealing their identities. The revelation of a potential accomplice shifted the investigation into high gear. Detectives cross-referenced financial transactions, communications, and social interactions, searching for anyone whose patterns aligned with the new evidence. Even those previously considered peripheral to the case were now scrutinized. Every movement, every digital footprint, and every minor inconsistency became a potential key to unraveling the truth. The pressure was immense as loved ones watched closely, desperate for answers, grappling with the realization that someone who had seemed harmless or unknown could have played a role in the murder. As the pieces began to fall into place, it became increasingly clear that D4vd's death was part of a broader scheme. The combination of technical knowledge, access to the Tesla, and knowledge of his personal life suggested that the perpetrators had studied him for weeks, possibly months. Investigators faced the daunting task of untangling this web of deception, identifying who was involved, and determining the exact sequence of events that led to his death. With each revelation, the case grew more intricate, the threads of motive, opportunity, and manipulation intertwining. Loved ones were forced to confront the chilling reality that trust could be exploited, that danger could hide behind familiarity, and that the truth of D4vd's murder was far more complex and darker than anyone had imagined. The investigation had reached a turning point, and the coming revelations promised to expose shocking betrayals and hidden schemes that no one had anticipated. In the final phase of the investigation, the truth behind D4vd's death began to emerge with startling clarity. Authorities identified the mastermind behind the murder, a trusted business partner who had cultivated a thought of loyalty while secretly orchestrating the crime. The partner had manipulated financial records, exploited personal access, and meticulously studied D4vd's habits, ultimately weaponizing the Tesla itself to stage a fatal accident. Every detail of the plan had been carefully calculated to avoid detection, from the timing of the tampering to the coordination with an accomplice who ensured no obvious evidence would link back to them. The realization sent shockwaves through D4vd's circle. Loved ones, who had endured months of grief and uncertainty, were confronted with a betrayal that cut deeper than the murder itself. Someone they had trusted implicitly had used that trust as a weapon, hiding greed, jealousy, and ambition behind a mask of friendship. Investigators pieced together the complex web of deceit, connecting digital evidence, financial transactions, and forensic findings to reveal the full extent of the plot. The involvement of multiple conspirators explained the earlier anomalies, the inconsistencies in alibis, and the meticulous planning that had made the crime initially appear accidental. Court proceedings followed, exposing layers of manipulation and cunning that had kept the truth hidden for months. The evidence presented painted a picture of cold calculation and ruthless intent. Testimonies, expert analyses, and digital reconstructions demonstrated how the murder had been executed, leaving no room for doubt about the guilt of the mastermind and their accomplice. The verdict, once reached, brought legal justice, but it could not erase the emotional devastation experienced by those closest to D4vd. The story of betrayal, greed, and technology turned lethal left an indelible mark on everyone involved. Even as justice was served, the case continued to resonate with a chilling reminder: appearances can be deceiving, and those who seem closest may harbor hidden motives. The D4vd Tesla murder case highlighted how ambition, envy, and calculated planning could transform trust into danger, and how modern technology, intended to protect, could be manipulated to lethal effect. For the community, the case ended with the arrests and court verdicts, but for loved ones, the memory of betrayal and loss lingered, a haunting reminder that evil can be hidden in the most familiar places. The story of D4vd's death, from the shocking discovery to the final revelation, had unfolded like a labyrinth of twists and deception, leaving viewers both stunned and reflective on the fragile nature of trust, the consequences of greed, and the lengths some will go to hide the truth.